Hey guys, tonight we are traveling back to the 4th century BC, to the noisy, sun-drenched streets of ancient Athens. But we are not visiting as a tourist with a fanny pack and a camera. No, you are about to become one of history's most radical, most wonderfully stubborn philosophers. You are going to live a life so minimalist, it makes modern tiny homes look like sprawling palaces. Frankly, if you were dropped into this world for real, you probably wouldn't last the first day without complaining about the lack of Wi-Fi. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And in the comments, let me know your city and what time it is for you right now. It is always cool to see where everyone is tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The salt spray feels coarse against your skin. For weeks, the rhythmic creak of the ship's timbers and the endless expanse of the wind-arc sea have been your only companions. You are on a merchant vessel, but you are not a merchant. You're a cargo of a different sort, an exile. Behind you, across the water, lies Sinope, your home, or what used to be your home. The city of your birth, a bustling port on the Black Sea, has cast you out. You close your eyes and the memory flickers, sharp and unwelcome. The smell of hot metal and the clinking of silver. Your father, Hydrosias, was a banker, a respectable mentor of the city's currency. And you, well, you were his son. You were supposed to follow in his footsteps, to understand the weight and value of things. But you understood it a little too well. The charge was defacing the currency. A simple phrase for a complicated mess. The story that got you banished was that you and your father were caught at dole trading the coinage, shaving off a bit of silver here, mixing in a cheaper metal there. It was a serious crime, an act that undermined the very trust the city was built on. But in the quiet moments on this ship, you replay a different version in your mind. You remember the journey to the great oracle at Delphi, the cryptic whisper of the priestess. When you asked for guidance on what you should do with your life, the answer came back, Peritur existun no mismatin. A phrase that could mean, to face the currency, but it could also, just as easily, mean, reevaluate all values. So which was it? A divine command to question everything society holds dear, or a simple instruction to commit fraud? History, of course, loves a good argument. Academics still debate whether you were the mastermind, a reluctant accomplice to your father's scheme, or if the whole story was a political smear job. Perhaps you simply saw the system for what it was, a game of agreed-upon fictions, and you decided to play your own game. It doesn't matter now. The result is the same. Your name is mud in Sinope. Your father is in prison or exiled himself. The details are fuzzy. And you are here, on a ship bound for the heart of the Greek world, Athens. You have nothing but the tunic on your back and a head full of dangerous ideas. The ship finally glides into the port of Piraeus. The sudden explosion of sound and smell is overwhelming. Dockworkers shout in a dialect of Greek that's faster, sharper than you are used to. The air is thick with the scent of fish, briny nets, olive oil, and the dust of 1,000 journeys. You step onto the pier, your legs wobbly after so long at sea, and you are immediately swallowed by the crowd. You follow the flow of people along road connecting the port to the city proper, and then you see it. Rising above the chaotic rooftops, stark and perfect against the brilliant blue sky, is the Acropolis. The Parthenon sits atop it like a crown of the gods, a testament to order, wealth, and power. It's magnificent. It's intimidating. And it has absolutely nothing to do with you. You wander into the Agora, the central marketplace. This is the thrumming heart of Athens. Merchants hawk their wares from shaded stalls, selling everything from vibrant pottery to pungent spices. Philosophers gather in small groups under the shade of olive trees, debating the nature of the soul. Politicians stride past with an air of self-importance, their fine robes trailing in the dust. Everyone seems to have a purpose, a place, a destination. You have none of these things. You are a ghost here. Your pockets are empty. The coins that defined your old life are now the reason you have none. You watch a man hand over a silver drachma for a loaf of bread, and you can't help but smirk. That little piece of metal he just traded, what is it? Really? It's a promise. A story. And you've been kicked out of the story. The sun begins to dip low, painting the marble buildings in hues of orange and pink. The air grows cooler. The crowds begin to thin as people head home to their families, to their dinners, to their beds. You are left standing alone in the growing twilight. The immensity of your situation settles upon you not as a panic, but as a strange hello come. You have been stripped of everything. Your city, your family, your status, your wealth. You are a blank slate in the biggest, busiest city you have ever seen. You have to start from zero. And as you stand there, a thought, clear and sharp as a shard of glass, forms in your mind. Maybe Zaro is the perfect place to start. The real question is, where does a man who has nothing spend the night? The final sliver of sun disappears behind the hills, and a deep indigo twilight bleeds across the sky. The Athenian agora, once a hive of commerce and debate, is now emptying out, its energy draining away into the surrounding network of narrow, winding streets. You watch as a baker shutters his stall, dough born, comforting smell of yeast and honey lingering in the cooling air for just a moment before dissipating. Families, chattering and laughing, head home, their figures silhouetted against the warm glow of oil lamps lit in their doorways. Their day is ending. Yours is just becoming a problem. You start to walk, with no destination in mind. Your sandals, thin and worn, slap softly against the cool stone paths. The grand marble buildings that looked so impressive in the daylight now loom over you like pale, sleeping giants. You drift past the stove of Atullos, a long, covered walkway lined with columns. During the day, it was filled with merchants and shoppers seeking shade. Now it's a cavern of shadows, echoing with the silence of abandoned business. Your stomach rumbles, a dull ache that reminds you of the loaf of bread you saw earlier. But hunger is a secondary concern. The primary, most ancient instinct is the need for shelter, a safe place to close your eyes. You wander towards the low hill on which the temple of Hephaestus stands, its columns stark against the star-dusted sky. It's one of the best preserved temples in all of Greece, a monument to the god of the forge and craftsmanship, a place of the divine. Surely, you think, there is sanctity here, a place of refuge. You climb the gentle slope and stand before the temple steps. It is profoundly quiet up here, away from the last vestiges of city noise. You can almost feel the presence of the god within. This seems like a good place. Safe, solid, and watched over. You consider settling down on the stalobate, the top step of the temple's base. It's a flat, wide expanse of marble. Uncomfortable, certainly, but secure. As you linger, a temple priest, or perhaps just a watchman, emerges from the shadows. He doesn't shout or threaten. He just stands there, holding a single, flickering lamp, his gaze communicating a simple, unspoken message. This is not a fluffer's. You understand immediately. The gods may be for everyone, but their front porches are not. To sleep here would be a violation, a sign of disrespect. It's a classic rule. You can admire the institution, but don't you dare get too comfortable on its property. Defeated, you give a slight nod and turn away, descending back into the relative chaos of the agora. You find yourself back at one of the SDOs. It's not a temple, just a public building. Less sacred, more practical. As your eyes adjust to the deep darkness within the covered walkway, you begin to make out shapes. You are not alone. In the recessed spaces between the columns, other figures are settling in for the night. A handful of them, scattered like discarded laundry. You see an old man with a long, matted beard, a woman curled up with a small bundle, perhaps a traveling merchant who missed the last cart out of the city. No one speaks. This is the unspoken protocol of the city's margins. This is a little-known fact of Athenian life. For all its glory and philosophy, the city had its share of people who fell through the cracks. The grand public porticos, the STOs, often served as the unofficial dormitories for the transient and the destitute. They were the original form of public housing, unfurnished, unheated, and with a strict zero amenities policy. You find an empty space at the far end, away from the others. You sit down, your back against a cold Doric column. The marble leaches the last of the day's warmth from your body. You lie down, using your arm as a pillow. The ground is unforgivingly hard. From somewhere down the colonnade, you hear someone start to snore, the low, rasping sound. And as you lie there, staring up into the darkness, a question begins to form. Why is this so wrong? Why is this stone floor considered the absolute bottom, a mark of failure? The people in the houses nearby are also lying on hard surfaces, wooden beds, perhaps softened by a straw mattress or a wool blanket. But they are inside, behind a locked door. What is that door protecting them from? The night air? The snores of a stranger? Or is it just protecting them from the realization that the line between their comfort and your cold stone floor is thinner than they think? Historians and archaeologists still argue about the nature of poverty in classical Athens. Was it a widespread social crisis the city actively ignored? Or was it a collection of individual misfortunes? People like you who were simply down on their luck. There were no formal charities, no soup kitchens. Your well-being was the responsibility of your family, your kin. If you had none, or if you'd been cast out by them, you were on your own. Society's safety net was the web of human connection, and yours had been torn to shreds. But you don't feel sorry for yourself. Laying on the hard ground, you feel a strange sense of clarity. All the things you've lost, money, status, a roof over your head, they were all just layers of insulation. They were buffers between you and the raw, unfiltered experience of being alive. Now, the insulation is gone. You can feel the cold. You can hear the city's quiet breathing. You can feel the solid, unyielding reality of the earth beneath you. You are not a victim. You are an observer. You are conducting an experiment. And the first night's data is in. A bed is a preference, not a necessity. A house is a box people hide in. As you drift into an uneasy sleep, you realize you don't just need a place to stay. You need a home that makes a statement, a shelter that is also a lesson. The stove is a temporary solution, a compromise, and you are quickly realizing that you are not a man of compromise. The next morning, you wake up stiff, cold, and with a crick in your neck that feels like a tiny, angry sculptor has been chiseling at your vertebrae all night. The first rays of sunlight are slicing through the columns of the stove, illuminating motes of dust dancing in the air. The other temporary residents are already gone, having melted back into the city at the first sign of dawn. The agora is slowly coming to life, the air filled with the sounds of cart wheels on stone and the distant crowing of a rooster. You spend the next few days in a state of deep observation, a walk-in, breathing survey of Athenian life. You see how people live, what they value. You watch them build walls, lock doors, and accumulate possessions. Their lives seem to be a constant effort to cushion themselves from reality. They surround themselves with things, pottery, furniture, expensive fabrics, decorative trinkets. Each object is another layer, another distraction. It's all so complicated. And you decide, so unnecessary. You know you need a permanent place. The stove is for transients, and you're planning on staying. but you refuse to participate in the charade of renting a room or building a shelter. That would mean re-entering the system of commerce and convention you've just been so thoroughly ejected from. No, your home has to be a rejection of all that. It has to be simple, self-contained, and, most importantly, absurd. It needs to be a piece of living street theater. Your search takes you to the Metro, the sanctuary of the Mother of the Gods, Rhea. But you're not there to pray. You're either because nearby, stacked and waiting for use in construction or for sale, are enormous ceramic jars. These aren't the kind of amphorae used for wine or olive oil. These are pitoi, huge, earthenware vessels, some as tall as a man, used for storing grain or other bulk goods. They are, essentially, ancient ceramic barrels. You stand before one of them. It's lying on its side. It's wide-mouthed like a small cave entrance. It's simple. It's functional. It's ownerless, at least for the moment. And it's perfect. It has a stark, almost comical elegance. A house with one curved wall and no doors. The choice of a pithos is a masterstroke of philosophical branding. Why? First, it's a direct insult to the Athenian obsession with property. Bayhouse, the oikos, was the fundamental unit of Athenian society. It represented family, lineage, wealth, and civic standing. By choosing to live in a discarded piece of pottery, you are essentially saying, your most sacred social institution is, to me, no more valuable than a piece of trash. Second, it's a statement about nature. You aren't building a structure that imposes itself on the landscape. You are occupying a ready-made form, a shell, much like a hermit crab. It's a way of living that is minimally invasive. You're not scarring the earth with a foundation. You're just burrowing a pot for a while. This is a fun, slightly gross tidbit. Ancient sources, particularly the writer Seneca, noted that the Stoics who came after you would sometimes point out that your choice of a jar was also a reminder of the womb and the tomb. We are born from a curved, enclosed space, and we are often buried in one. Your pithos was a constant, visual reminder of the full cycle of life and death, stripped of all ceremony. It was your home, your birthplace, and your coffin, all in one. Sure, right. But there's a debate that historians have been having for centuries. Did you actually live in a pithos? The Greek word is ambiguous. Later Roman writers, like Seneca, translated it as douium, which is a big barrel, often made of wood. The iconic image we have of you, the one from countless paintings and sculptures, is of a man in a wooden barrel. But in 4th century BC Athens, a vessel of that size would have been made of clay, a ceramic pithos. The wooden barrel, as we know it, was more of a Celtic and Roman thing. So, was it a pot or a barrel? Most scholars today lean heavily towards the ceramic pithos. It just makes more historical sense. The image of the wooden barrel is likely a later, more romanticized invention. It just goes to show how a simple mistranslation can shape our entire visual understanding of a historical figure. You don't care about any of that. You found your spot. You roll the giant jar. It takes a surprising amount of effort. Into a suitable location near the Metro, a place with good sun exposure. You crawl inside. The acoustics are strange. The sounds of the agora are muffled, distant. Your own breathing sounds loud, amplified. The curved clay walls are cool to the touch. It smells of earth and fired clay. It's small, cramped, and offers no creature comforts whatsoever. It's perfect. You have no room for possessions. You have no room for guests. You have room only for yourself and your thoughts. Passers-by stop and stare. At first, they are confused. Then, amused. A man living in a pot. It's a joke. Children point and laugh. Merchants shake their heads and mutter about lunatics. But you just sit there, peering out from the mouth of your new home, your expression unreadable. You let them look. You want them to look. This isn't just a shelter. It's a stage, and the play is just beginning. You've made your home in the heart of Athens, and in doing so, you've declared war on every single one of their assumptions about what a home is supposed to be. Now that you have a home, or at least your version of one, you need a name. Not your given name, Diogenes, but a title, a label, something that captures the essence of your new, radical lifestyle. The people of Athens, ever fond of a good nickname, are happy to provide one for you. They start calling you Kynikos, the Cynic. Today, when we hear the word cynic, we picture someone who is sarcastic, pessimistic, and distrustful of every honest motives. A person who rolls their eyes at sincerity and assumes the worst of human nature. But that's a modern dilution of the term. In your time, Kynikos meant something very different and far more direct. It literally meant dog-like. And they weren't wrong. You were, in fact, actively modeling your life after the dogs of Athens. Think about it from their perspective. You live in a pot on the street, not in a house. You eat when and where you find food, often in the public square, with no sense of shame. You sleep in the sun. You attend to your bodily needs without retreating to a private space. You are utterly shameless, living according to nature, not convention. And what other creature in Athens lives this way? The street dogs. The dogs of the Agora were a common sight. They were scavengers, companions, and sometimes nuisances. They lived without anxiety about the future or regret about the past. They were loyal to kindness and would bark at pretense. They were the ultimate minimalists. You saw in them a purity of existence that humans, with all their rules and anxieties, had lost. You embraced the comparison. When someone threw a bone to you as an insult, you were said to have simply cocked your leg and peed on him. Dog style. One of the most famous stories illustrating this comes from a banquet you decided to crash. You wander into a wealthy man's home, uninvited, and start looking around. The host and his guests, annoyed by your presence, start calling you the dog. To get rid of you, they begin throwing you bones from their table. Instead of getting angry, you play along. You pick up the bones, but instead of eating them, you do what a dog would do to mark its territory. The party, as you can imagine, came to a rather abrupt end. This dog-like behavior was a core tenet of your philosophy. The Greek word for social convention was nomos. Nomos included everything from laws and religious rites to basic table manners and rules of hygiene. You believed that nomos was an artificial construct, a cage that trapped people in a state of perpetual anxiety and hypocrisy. Your goal was to live entirely by physis, or nature, to do only what was natural and necessary, and to do it openly. This is where a little known, and slightly bizarre, aspect of your philosophy comes in. The concept of an AIA, which translates roughly to shamelessness or impudence. For you, this was a virtue. You would deliberately do things in public that everyone else did in private. That historian Diogenes Laertius, who wrote a biography of you centuries later, chronicles these acts in almost gleeful detail. You would eat, sleep, and even masturbate in the middle of the agora. When people were shocked, your response was simple. If it is not absurd to do it, it is not absurd to do it in public. Your logic was that if an act was inherently wrong, then the shame associated with it was purely a social convention, and therefore meaningless. You were using your own body as a tool to smash social norms. Of course, the origin of the Cynic name is, like everything else about you, a matter of debate among academics. Did the name come first, and you leaned into it? Or did your dog-like behavior lead people to call you that? Another theory, proposed by some scholars, is that the name originated with your teacher, and is the nurse, who was said to have taught at a gymnasium just outside Athens called the Sinope, a place designated for those of impure Athenian blood. The name could have meant from the Sinope, but honestly, the dog-like explanation is far more popular and, let's face it, way more in character for you. It has better branding, so you accept the label. You are Diogenes the dog. You are a watchdog for humanity, here to balk at foolishness and bite the heels of the arrogant. The name that was likely meant as an insult becomes your badge of honor. It perfectly encapsulates your mission, to show people that the path to virtue and happiness isn't through wealth, power, or reputation. It's through a radical, shameless, dog-like simplicity. You sit in the mouth of your Pythagoras, gnawing on a piece of dried bread, watching the endless parade of civilized Athenians hurry by. They look at you and see a madman, a leader, a failure. They call you a dog, but you look back at them and see the ones who are truly trapped. They are leashed by 1,000 invisible chains, the need for approval, the fear of judgment, the endless pursuit of things they don't need. You, on the other hand, are free. You are the one off the leash. Let them call you a dog. It's the highest compliment they could possibly pay you. One bright, searingly hot Athenian afternoon, you decide to embark on a new quest. The agora is at its busiest. The air hums with the chatter of 1,000 conversations, the clinking of coins, the haggling over fish and figs. It's the middle of the day, the sun high and forgiving in the sky, and you are walking through the crowd holding a lit lantern. This becomes one of your most iconic and enduring images. People stop what they're doing to watch you. It's a completely nonsensical act. Why would anyone need a lamp in the full glare of the Greek sun? It's provocative. It's a question posed not with words, but with an object. A merchant, wiping sweat from his brow, finally asks the obvious question. Diogenes, what are you doing? Can't you see it's daytime? You hold the lantern up high, peering into the faces of the people who have gathered around you, your gaze intense, searching. You don't give a straight answer. Instead, you reply with the purpose of your search. I am looking for a human being. The Greek word you use is anthropos, which means human in the most fundamental sense, not inner, which means man in the sense of a citizen or a hero. You are searching for a true, authentic human. You continue your slow procession through the marketplace. You hold your lamp up to the face of a politician who is delivering an impassioned speech, and then you move on, shaking your head. You shine it on a group of young men from wealthy families, idly gossiping, and you walk away in disappointment. You peer into the stalls of the merchants, into the shaded corners where philosophers are debating. Then everywhere you go, you find no one that meets your criteria. Your quest is a piece of performance art designed to make a devastating point. You are not literally looking for a person. You are surrounded by them. What you are looking for is an honest person, an individual who is not a hypocrite, someone who lives in accordance with nature and reason, free from the corruption of desire, vanity, and social pretense. By claiming you can't find one, you are indicting the entire city. You are saying, I see all of you in the bright light of day, and I still can't find a genuine soul among you. It's a profound philosophical critique delivered via a simple, almost chemical, drug. You're using irony to expose a deeper truth. Everyone in Athens, especially the powerful and the respected, puts on a public face. They perform their roles as good citizens, wise philosophers, or pious priests. But you, with your lamp, are suggesting that this is all mask. In the brightest light, you can only see the performance, not the person. This is a good time to bring up a strange little detail about ancient lamps. The lamp you would have been carrying was not some grand, ornate bronze lantern. It would have been a simple, saucer-like terracotta lamp, probably fueled with olive oil, with a small hole for a linen wick. The light it produced would have been small, flickering, and probably quite smoky. This humble object makes your act even more poignant. You are using a tiny, pathetic flame to search for integrity in a world blinded by the sun, a world that thinks it can see everything clearly but is, in your view, completely in the dark. The historical accuracy of this specific story, the lamp in daylight, is something scholars occasionally poke at. Did it really happen exactly as described by Diogenes Laertius, who was writing more than 500 years after you died? Or is it an allegorical tale, a philosophical anecdote that was crafted later to perfectly encapsulate your core message? The consensus is that it's too good a story not to be based in some truth. It aligns so perfectly with your known methods of using shocking, public acts to make a point. Whether you did it once or 100 times, it became part of your legend because it was so profound to you. The story survives because it's a perfect summary of your life's work, a tireless, and ultimately fruitless, search for honesty in a world of performance. As the sun begins to set, you finally extinguish your little lamp. You haven't found your anthropos. You probably never expected to. The search itself is the message. You force dozens, maybe hundreds, of people to stop and ask themselves, even for a fleeting moment, what is he looking for? And would he find it in me? You return to your pithos as twilight falls. The Athenians go back to their business, shaking their heads at the madman with the lamp. But the image is seared into their minds. It's an uncomfortable question that will linger long after your strange little light has been put out. They might dismiss you as a lunatic, but they can't entirely dismiss the question your actions have raised. Are they living authentically? Or are they just shadows, playing roles in the bright, blinding sunlight, their true selves hidden away? You've planted a seed of doubt, and for you, that's a good day's work. Your daily survival depends on one of the most ancient and humbling of human activities, biting. But like everything you do, you turn it into a form of philosophical practice. You don't just ask for food or money because you need it. You do it to train your own soul and to teach a lesson to others. Your approach is, to put it mildly, unconventional. You don't posture as a pathetic, downtrodden victim deserving of pity. Instead, your begging is often direct, confrontational, and laced with a sharp, cutting logic. When you ask for alms, you don't say, "Please, help a poor man." You say, "If you've given to others, give to me also. If you have not, then start with me." You frame it not as a plea for charity, but as a logical imperative. You're not asking for a handout. You're offering them an opportunity to practice virtue. One day, you're particularly hungry. You approach a man known for his wealth and ask him for a donation. The man hesitates, and then says, "I will give to you, but only if you can persuade me." This is a classic intellectual challenge in Athens, a city that prizes rhetoric and debate. You could have launched into a philosophical argument about duty, generosity, or the nature of wealth. Instead, you give a one-sentence reply that is both brilliant and utterly disarming. If I had thought I needed to persuade you, I would have advised you to go hang yourself. The shock of the statement, its sheer audacity, cuts through all the pretense. You're not there to play his intellectual games. The man is stunned into silence and, according to the story, gives you the money. But your most bizarre begging practice, the one that truly baffled the people of Athens, was your habit of asking for alms from statues. You walk up to a bronze statue of a victorious athlete or a marble one of a minor god. You stand before the cold, lifeless form and extend your hand. A little something for an old philosopher. You might mutter, your voice earnest. You wait patiently. The statue, of course, does not respond. It doesn't flinch. It doesn't speak. It doesn't reach into its non-existent pockets. It just stares back with blank, unseeing eyes. You are met with perfect, absolute rejection. People see you doing this and think you've finally lost your mind completely. Hey, fellow citizen, probably trying to be helpful, comes up to you and says, "Diogenes, why are you doing that?" You know a statue can't give you anything. You turn to him, your expression completely serious, and deliver the punchline of your strange exercise. "I am practicing how to deal with rejection. This is a masterclass in Cynic spiritual exercise. In the modern world, we might call it rejection therapy." You understood that one of the greatest sources of human suffering is the fear of being told no. This fear prevents people from asking for what they want, from speaking their minds, from taking risks. It's a form of self-imprisonment. So you devised a way to inoculate yourself against it. By repeatedly facing the guaranteed, silent, and unemotional rejection of a statue, you were hardening your spirit. When you later had to ask a real person for food, a person who could insult you, shove you, or humiliate you, it was nothing. You'd already faced the ultimate refusal. This little anecdote reveals a deep psychological insight. You recognize that our emotional reactions are often what harm us, not the events themselves. A statue cannot hurt your feelings. It is your own expectation of a yes that creates the sting of a no. By removing the expectation, you remove the sting. This is a core idea that the Stoics would later develop into a full-blown philosophical system. But you were out there on the streets, living it in the most literal way possible. Here's a cool side note. The statues you were begging from were not the pristine, white marble figures we see in museums today. Most ancient Greek statues were brightly painted. The bronze ones gleamed like gold. They had inlaid eyes made of glass or ivory, making them look startlingly lifelike. So, when you were asking a statue for money, you were speaking to a figure that looked intensely, almost eerily, human. This makes your practice even more powerful. You were training yourself to see past the realistic, emotional facade to the cold, unresponsive material beneath. Of course, historians sometimes wonder about the pragmatics of it all. Did you subsist entirely on begging? It's a point of some academic discussion. While the stories emphasize your begging, it's likely you had a network of admirers and sympathizers who ensured you didn't actually starve. People in ancient Greece, for all their love of convention, also had a strange respect for holy fools and eccentric philosophers. Someone probably left a pouch of lentils or a small loaf of bread near your pythos from time to time. Your begging was as much about the philosophical performance as it was about filling your stomach. So you continue your daily rounds. You ask a wealthy man for a single olive, and you beg from an unyielding block of marble. Each interaction is a lesson. Each no is a victory. You are not just begging for your supper. You are begging for your own freedom. Freedom from fear, freedom from shame, and freedom from the tyranny of other people's opinions. And in doing so, you are teaching a masterclass to anyone who bothers to watch. The Athenian agora is more than just a marketplace. It's a social stage. How you behave here defines who you are. And for most Athenians, that means adhering to a strict, unspoken code of conduct. You eat your meals at home, seated properly. You conduct your business with a certain level of decorum. You maintain a public persona of civilized restraint. You, naturally, have decided to use the agora as a laboratory for dismantling every single one of these rules. Your lunch break becomes a daily spectacle of anti-convention. Round midday, when the sun is high and the market is crowded, you find a prominent spot, perhaps on the steps of a public building. You sit down, pull out your simple meal from a leather pouch, and begin to eat. Your meal is never elaborate. It's usually a handful of lentils, a hunk of barley bread, or some figs, foods that require no cooking and no ceremony. The philosopher's diet. But it's not what you eat. It's how and where you eat it that causes a stir. You eat with a focused, almost animalistic simplicity, while others might retreat to the shade for a quiet, respectable meal. You plant yourself right in the middle of the foot traffic. You are making a very deliberate point. Eating is a natural function. like breathing or sleeping. Why should it be hidden away? Why has society decided that this particular act of survival needs to be privatized? One day, as you are enjoying your simple lunch of raw onions and water, a group of Athenians stops to gawk. One of them, feeling bold, scolds you. Diogenes, we eat in our homes. It is not proper to eat in the middle of the agora. You look up from your onion, your eyes watering slightly, whether from the onion or from feigned emotion. No one can tell. You don't argue or defend yourself. Instead, you state a simple, undeniable fact. I am hungry here in the agora. Therefore, I am eating here in the agora. Your logic is brutally simple. You are aligning your actions with your immediate, natural needs, not with some arbitrary social timetable or location. You're hungry now, so you eat now. The location is irrelevant. This public eating was a direct challenge to the Greek concept of the symposium. The symposium was the idealized form of dining, a private drinking party for elite men, held in a designated room of the house, filled with conversation, poetry, and wine. It was structured, exclusive, and highly ritualized. Your public lunch of uncooked lentils was the anti-symposium. It was open to all, to watch, at least, completely unstructured, and celebrated the most basic, unadorned act of fueling the body. You were democratizing the act of eating, stripping it of its classist and ritualistic baggage. Here's a peculiar detail about Athenian dining etiquette that you were gleefully trampling on. For the Greeks, the way you ate signaled your level of self-control, which they considered a cardinal virtue. To eat messily or too eagerly in public was seen as a sign of a barbaric or unrestrained nature. Your complete indifference to these standards was a way of saying that their definition of self-control was foolish. True self-control, in your view, wasn't about politely nibbling your food. It was about controlling your desires for luxury, fame, and wealth. You could eat your onion like a wild animal because you had mastered the desires that truly mattered. Naturally, the historical record of these events, primarily from Diogenes Laertius, is filled with anecdotes that may have been embellished for dramatic effect. Did you really just sit there eating, or were your actions more of a running commentary? Some scholars suggest that your lunch break was a form of Socratic dialogue, but with food instead of questions. You weren't just eating, you were inviting confrontation. Every meal was an open invitation for someone to challenge you, allowing you to then deconstruct their conventional beliefs with a sharp, witty retort. The food was just a prop for the real philosophical meal. One of your most famous rebukes came during one of these public meals. Someone saw you and sneered. This is why people call you a dog, because you eat in public. You looked up, unfazed, and replied, "No, you are the dogs, for you stand around and watch me while I eat." With a single sentence, you flipped the script entirely. You weren't the spectacle, they were. Their morbid curiosity, their need to stop and judge a man for simply satisfying his hunger, was the truly strained, dog-like behavior. You finish your simple meal. You wipe your hands on your tunic. No need for napkins. And then, perhaps, you stretch out in the sun for a nap, right there on the steps. You have refueled your body in the most efficient and natural way possible. In doing so, you have also served up a deeply uncomfortable lesson for the citizens of Athens. You have shown them that their rules of etiquette, the ones they believe separate them from savages, are just fragile habits. And you, the man with the onion, are living proof that one can be perfectly content, and perhaps even virtuous, without them. In the intellectual ecosystem of Athens, there is no bigger name than Plato. He is the head of the academy, a prestigious school of philosophy. His students are the sons of the wealthy and powerful. His ideas are complex, dealing with abstract concepts like forms, justice, and the ideal state. He represents the pinnacle of Athenian intellectualism, structured, sophisticated, and deeply serious. You, on the other hand, are the complete opposite. You are the philosopher of the street, the master of the messy, practical, and absurd. A collision between your two worlds is inevitable, and when it happens, it is glorious. The setting for your most famous intellectual spar is Plato's own academy. Plato, in the course of a lecture, is trying to define the essence of a human being. After much deliberation, he arrives at a definition that he feels is both precise and profound. Man is a bipedal, featherless animal, a two-legged animal without feathers. The definition is met with murmurs of approval from his students. It seems logical. It separates humans from birds, which have feathers, from dogs, which have 4 legs, and from fish, which have neither. It's a neat, tidy, academic box. News of this brilliant new definition reaches you in the agora. You hear written a slow, mischievous grin spreads across your face. Hey, featherless bite. It's the kind of abstract, out-of-touch nonsense that you live to demolish. You see the flaw in it immediately, not through logical debate, but through a flash of comedic, practical genius. You don't try to treat us refuting him. You don't engage in a formal argument. You go and find a chicken. You take the poor, unsuspecting bird to a quiet corner and proceed to pluck it clean. It's a messy, slightly ridiculous task, but you are a man committed to the bit. Once the chicken is completely featherless, squawking and indignant, you tuck it under your arm. Your destination, the academy. You walk right into the middle of Plato's hallowed institution, where he is likely still basking in the glow of his definition. You don't say a word. You simply hold up the plucked chicken and declare, with theatrical flair, "Behold, I have brought you Plato's man." The room erupts. The students are horrified, confused, and probably trying very hard not to laugh. Plato is mortified. In one single, absurd gesture, you have completely humiliated him. You've shown that his lofty, abstract definition is laughably inadequate. Here is a creature that perfectly fits his criteria. It's an animal. It has 2 legs, and it now has no feathers. But it is obviously not a human. You have stress-tested his definition in the real world, and it has failed spectacularly. The story goes that Plato, chagrined but also a good sport, amended his definition on the spot. From then on, a human was a featherless piped with broad, flat nails. It's a less elegant definition, but it's certainly more chicken-proof. This moment is more than just a funny prank. It's a perfect illustration of the fundamental difference between your two philosophies. Plato believed that truth was found in the world of abstract forms, in pure ideas that existed beyond the messy reality of the physical world. You believed that truth was found right here, in the dirt, in the body, in the plucked chicken. You were a radical empiricist. If a theory didn't work in practice, it was worthless. Here's a little known detail that adds another layer to the story. Your attack on Plato was part of a larger, ongoing philosophical feud. You apparently had a nickname for Plato's lectures. You called them a waste of time. You would often stand at the back of his audiences and distract everyone by eating loudly during the lecture, making his refined students incredibly uncomfortable. You saw his school not as a place of genuine enlightenment, but as a social club for privileged young men who were more interested in appearing wise than in actually living a virtuous life. You called Plato himself a man whose words were all sound and fury. Of course, the plucked chicken incident is another one of those stories that sounds so perfect. Some historians question its literal truth. Is it possible that the story was invented by later cynics to make Plato look foolish and to make you look like a homespun genius? Absolutely. It's a classic David and Goliath tale, philosopher style. But whether it happened exactly that way or not, it captures the spirit of your relationship with the philosophical establishment. You were the ultimate heckler. You were the court jester in the kingdom of ideas, using humor and absurdity to speak truth to power. You leave the academy, your point having been made, leaving the plucked chicken to its fate. You have demonstrated, more effectively than any long-winded speech could. That wisdom isn't found in detached, airy definitions. It's found in looking at the world as it actually is, in all its weird, messy, and sometimes hilarious reality. Plato may have the grand school and the wealthy students, but you, with your chicken, have just won the day. One day, the biggest celebrity in the entire world comes to town. Not just a politician or a famous playwright, but Alexander the Great. He is young, handsome, brilliant, and at the beginning of a military career that will see him conquer most of the known world. He is a student of Aristotle, who himself was a student of Plato. He is the embodiment of power, ambition, and worldly success. All of Athens is abuzz with his presence. Alexander, having heard tales of the strange, brilliant, and utterly disrespectful philosopher living in a pot, is intrigued. In a world of sycophants and flatterers, a man who insults everyone equally is a rare curiosity. He decides to pay you a visit. This isn't just a casual stroll. It's a major event. Alexander arrives with his full entourage of generals, guards, and attendants, a glittering procession of power and prestige. They find you in your usual spot, outside your pitois, sunbathing. You are lying on the ground, enjoying the simple, free warmth of the sun on your skin. You are, by all accounts, doing absolutely nothing. The arrival of Alexander and his retinue casts a long shadow over you. The chatter and the clanking armor block out the peaceful sounds of the morning. You crack open an eye, annoyed at the interruption. You see a crowd of well-dressed, important-looking men standing over you. At their center is the young, charismatic commander himself. There is a moment of silence. The whole of Athens, it seems, is holding its breath to see what will happen. Alexander, used to people bowing and scraping before him, is genuinely curious. He looks down at you, a man with no possessions, no status, no home to speak of, and he is impressed by your utter lack of fear or difference. To break the silence, Alexander gives you a magnanimous, almost kingly, greeting. He says, "I am Alexander the Great." You, without getting up, without showing any sign of being impressed, offer a simple, dry reply, "And I am Diogenes the Daw." The response is a masterpiece of deflation. You've met his grand title with your own humble, slightly insulting one. You've put yourself on equal footing, not by puffing yourself up, but by refusing to be intimidated by his grandeur. Alexander is amused, not offended. He sees that he is dealing with a man of extraordinary character. He decides to make you a grand offer, the kind a conqueror makes to a subject he wishes to honor. He says, "Ask of me any boon you like." It's a blank check. He is offering you anything your heart desires. Wealth beyond measure, a position of power, a fine house, the restoration of your citizenship in Sinope. Anything is on the table. It is the ultimate test of your philosophy. Your companions in the agora, the other beggars and street dwellers, probably lean in, eager to see what you'll ask for. This is their chance. You could ask for a fortune and share it. You squint up at the young king, at his powerful retinue standing there, blocking the morning light. You consider his offer for a moment, and then you deliver the most famous line of your entire life. You say, "Stand out of my light." That's it. Hypostathetio euhelio amoio. Get out of my sunshine. The gasp from the crowd must have been audible. The gods probably reached for their swords. You have just dismissed the most powerful man in the world as if he were a common nuisance, an annoying child blocking your view. You have told him that the only thing he possesses that you could possibly want is something he doesn't even own, the light of the sun. And right now, HES in the way of it. Your request is a profound philosophical statement. You are telling Alexander that he, with all his armies and all his gold, has nothing of real value to offer you. The greatest goods in life, sunshine, air, water, the freedom to think, are free and available to all. His power is the power to give people things they don't really need, things that will only enslave them in a web of desire and obligation. By asking for nothing more than the sun, you are demonstrating your complete self-sufficiency and freedom. This moment is so iconic that it has been retold and analyzed for millennia. One little-known aspect of the story is the setting. This likely took place not in Athens, but in Corinth, where you also spent a significant amount of time. Corinth was a major crossroads, a place where a figure like Alexander would have been holding court and meeting with various Greek leaders. Placing the story in Corinth makes it even more plausible. Naturally, historians have debated the literalness of this exchange. Did it happen exactly this way? Plutarch and Diogenes Laertius, our main sources, both recount it with great confidence. It's certainly possible. Alexander was known to have a genuine intellectual curiosity and a respect for unorthodox thinkers. But even if the dialogue was polished over time, it captures a truth that both men seem to recognize. The story ends with Alexander's reaction. His generals and courtiers are furious at your insolence. They mutter that you should be whipped or punished. But Alexander silences them. He is not angry. He is deeply, profoundly impressed. He turns to his grumbling generals and says the second most famous line from the encounter. Truly, if I were not Alexander, I would wish to be Diogenes. In that moment, the conqueror of the world admits his admiration, perhaps even his envy, for the man who wants nothing. Alexander understands your power. It's a power that cannot be taken away by armies or politics. It is the power of complete detachment. He, Alexander, is a slave to his ambition, his empire, his destiny. You are a slave to nothing. In a way, you are freer than he will ever be. He turns and leaves, allowing the sunlight to once again fall on your face. Your journey towards absolute minimalism is a process of subtraction. You've shed your home, your status, your reputation, and your need for social approval. But for a while, you still cling to a few, very basic possessions. Your simple tunic, your leather satchel for carrying food, a walking stick, and a single wooden bowl. The bowl is your last concession to civilization. It's a tool, a piece of technology. It allows you to scoop water from a public fountain and drink in a civilized manner. It separates you from the animals who must lap water directly from the source with their tongues. It's a small, almost insignificant object, but it's still a barrier between you and the life of pure, unadulterated nature. One day, you are heading to a fountain for a drink, bowl in hand. The sun is hot, and you are thirsty. As you approach the fountain, you see a young boy get there just before you. He is clearly poor, perhaps a runaway or an orphan. He has no possessions at all, not even a simple bowl like yours. You watch him, curious to see how he will manage. The boy cups his hands together under the spout, fills them with water, and brings them to his lips to drink. He is perfectly efficient. He wastes no motion. His hands, the most natural and readily available of all tools, are all he needs. You stop in your tracks. A wave of understanding, so clear and sharp it feels like a physical blow, washes over you. You have been a fool. You look at the boy, then down at the wooden bowl in your hand. This object, which you had considered a basic necessity, is a complete and utter luxury. It's redundant. Nature has already provided you with a perfectly functional cup. Two of them, in fact, attached to the ends of your arms. You have been carrying this extra weight, this piece of clutter, for no reason at all. It is an extravagance. In that moment, the boy becomes your teacher. The child, with his simple, unthinking ingenuity, has just out-philosophized you. He has shown you another layer of artificial in your own life that you had failed to see. Without a second thought, you lift your arm and throw the wooden bowl. It arcs through the air and clatters, against the stone pavement, rolling to a stop. You declare, loudly enough for anyone nearby to hear, "A child has beaten me in simplicity of living." You then walk to the fountain, cup your own hands as you saw the boy do, and drink the cool, fresh water. It feels more refreshing, more real, than any water you ever drank from your bowl. You have shed another layer. You are one step closer to absolute zero. This story is one of the most charming and powerful in your biography. It's a perfect parable about the nature of technology and needs. You realize that we often invent tools to solve problems that don't really exist, or that can be solved with what we already have. The bowl is a symbol of all the unnecessary complications we add to our lives in the name of convenience. A little-known detail about this is the material of the bowl itself. While it's often described as a simple wooden bowl, some accounts say it was a cup made from a clamshell or a gourd. The exact material doesn't matter, but the idea of it being a natural object, a shell, that you still deemed superfluous makes the point even stronger. You are rejecting even the simplest, most natural of tools if a more fundamental solution existed. The academic debate around this anecdote, as with many others, is about its origin. Is it a true story, or is it the CHREIA, a short, instructive anecdote created by your followers to illustrate a key Cynic principle? Many scholars believe it's the latter. The story is just too perfectly structured. The moral to neat. It functions as an ideal teaching tool, but its potential fabrication doesn't diminish its philosophical power. The story exists because it so perfectly explains your worldview. True wisdom lies in recognizing what is essential and discarding the rest. This act of throwing away the bowl is also a direct jab at the Athenian love for finely crafted objects. The city was famous for its pottery, beautifully decorated kylixas, drinking cups, and carators, mixing bowls. These objects were signs of status, taste, and wealth. Your plain wooden bowl was already a rejection of that aesthetic obsession. By throwing it away entirely, you are taking your critique to its ultimate conclusion. You weren't just rejecting fancy cups, you were rejecting the very idea of a cup. You walk away from the fountain, leaving the bowl lying on the ground. Perhaps another child will pick it up and use it. Perhaps it will be swept away with the rest of the day's refuse. It doesn't matter to you. You feel lighter. Not just because your satchel is a few ounces lighter, but because your mind is. You have unburdened yourself from another attachment, another false need. From this day forward, you drink with your hands. You eat your lentils directly from your pouch. You have streamlined your existence to a point of shocking purity. You are a living, breathing testament to the idea that happiness is not found in what you have, but in what you can do without. And you have just learned that you can do without quite a lot. Your unique lifestyle makes you a kind of living spectacle, and occasionally, you are invited, or more likely, you invite yourself, into the homes of the wealthy. These visits are not social calls. They are philosophical reconnaissance missions. You enter the world of luxury and excess to hold up a mirror to its owners. One such story involves your visit to the home of a very rich, but notoriously tasteless, man. The house is a monstrosity of conspicuous consumption. It's cluttered with expensive, gaudy furniture. The walls are covered in tacky frescoes. Gilded statues stand in every corner. It is, in your eyes, a prison of possessions. Every object screams for attention, a testament to the owner's wealth and his complete lack of refinement. The owner, proud of his material achievements, gives you a grand tour. He points out a rare vase from Egypt, a heady golden lamp, floors made of expensive imported marble. He expects you to be impressed, perhaps even a little envious. You walk through the house, your expression unreadable. You look at everything, taking in the sheer volume of stuff. The air is thick with the stagnant energy of hoarded wealth. You notice something interesting. For all the money spent on the house, It is surprisingly dirty. Dust coats the ornate carvings. The marble floors are sticky with spilled wine. It's a palace of clutter and grime. As you are walking through one of the main rooms, you feel a need to clear your throat and spit. This was a common, if crude, habit in the ancient world. But you are a guest in a man's home. Social convention dictates you should be discreet, perhaps ask for a receptacle or step outside. You, however, see an opportunity for a lesson. You look around the room, your eyes scanning the opulent mess. You look at the fine tapestries, the expensive couches, the cluttered tables. Then, you look at the owner's face. After a moment of dramatic deliberation, you hawk and spit directly in his face. The owner is, understandably, shocked and outraged. His guards likely move towards you. What is the meaning of this? He sputters, wiping the spittle from his cheek. Of all the places in my magnificent home, you choose to spit on me. You remain perfectly calm. You look him in the eye and deliver your explanation with flawless, infuriating logic. I looked all around your house, you say, and I could not find a single, more worthless or disgusting place to spit than your face. The insult is breathtaking in its genius. You are not just being rude for the sake of it. You are making a profound statement about value. You are telling him that his house, filled with objects he considers precious, is so cluttered and foul that there is no insignificant corner to be found. Every valuable object is, in your view, just part of the mess. Therefore, the only appropriate target, the most fitting receptacle for something as vile as spit, was the face of the man responsible for creating this tasteless, soulless environment. You've implied that he, the owner, is the cheapest, dirtiest thing in the entire house. This anecdote, while extreme, perfectly encapsulates your view on wealth. You didn't believe that wealth itself was inherently evil. What you despised was the way it corrupted people's judgment and enslaved their souls. People became so obsessed with acquiring and displaying their possessions that they lost sight of what was truly valuable: virtue, reason, and self-sufficiency. The rich man's house was not a home. It was a symptom of a spiritual sickness. A little-known but fascinating parallel to this is your recorded view on inheritance. You were once asked what you would leave behind after your death. Your answer was a piece of advice for your heirs. The people of Athens, I leave you the ability to distinguish the valuable from the worthless. You saw your entire life as a training course in discernment. By spitting in the face of a man who couldn't tell the difference, you were giving him a very personal, very wet, final exam. The historical basis for this story is, of course, debated. Did you really spit in a rich man's face? It's one of the more aggressive acts attributed to you. Some academics argue it might be a later invention, a story created to show your absolute fearlessness and commitment to speaking truth to power, even in the most visceral way. It's the ultimate act of parrhesia, fearless speech, a virtue the cynics prized above all others. Whether literal or allegorical, the story functions as a powerful warning against materialism. You are promptly thrown out of the house. You probably expected as much. You walk back to your POS, leaving the rich man to ponder your insult amidst his treasures. You have once again demonstrated your core belief. The more things you own, the more your things own you. Your wealth is not measured in gold or marble, but in the things you do not need. And by that standard, as you settle back into your simple clay pot, you are the richest man in all of Athens. You live your life in a constant, intimate dialogue with the natural world. While other Athenians use buildings, clothing, and elaborate customs to shield themselves from the elements, you choose to face them head-on. Your body is not something to be coddled and protected. It is your primary tool for experiencing reality, and it needs to be trained, hardened, and conditioned. Your home is a clay pot, but your true temple is your own physical form. This training, is essential and often overlooked, part of your philosophy. It's not just about intellectual insights. It's about embodied practice. You believe that to free the soul, you must first discipline the body by exposing it to hardship. In the blistering heat of the Greek summer, when the stones of the agora are hot enough to cook on, you don't seek shade like everyone else. Instead, you deliberately roll your pithos out into the most sun-scorched, open space you can find. You then strip off your single tunic and embrace the heat. You are said to have rolled in the hot sand, deliberately making yourself as uncomfortable as possible. When people ask you why you're torturing yourself, your answer is simple. You are preparing yourself for the challenges of life. By voluntarily enduring the lesser hardship of the heat, you are training your mind and body to withstand greater, involuntary sufferings that fate might send your way. Conversely, in the winter, when a damp chill settles over Athens, you do the opposite. While others huddle by their fires, you are said to have gone out in the coldest weather to embrace snow-covered statues. You would wrap your bare arms around the freezing marble, holding the embrace until your body was numb. The shock of the cold was a way to jolt your senses, to feel alive, and to prove that you could endure physical discomfort without complaint. You were teaching your body that it did not need the artificial comfort of a hearth and a blanket. This practice is a direct challenge to the prevailing Greek ideal of moderation, the famous golden mean. Philosophers like Aristotle would argue that virtue lies in finding the middle ground between extremes. Not too much pleasure, not too much pain. You thought this was cowardice. You believed that one should actively seek out and confront the extremes of experience in order to transcend them. Moderation was for the timid. This brings us to a weirdly specific and interesting detail about your daily regimen, your relationship with your own body odor. In a city like Athens, where public baths were a central part of social life and scented oils were a common luxury, you made a point of being fragrant, and not in a good way. You rarely bathe. Your single tunic was likely worn until it fell apart. You smelled of sweat, dust, and the simple realities of a life lived outdoors. This was just laziness. It was a philosophical statement. You were rejecting the nomos, the convention, that said a person must mask their natural human scent to be socially acceptable. You saw perfumes and excessive washing as another form of dishonesty, a way of presenting a false, sanitized version of yourself to the world. You were committed to being authentically, and sometimes offensively, human. Of course, historians have to piece together this aspect of your life from scattered, often hostile, sources. Is it possible your training was exaggerated by later writers to make you seem more extreme, more of a wild man? Perhaps. The image of you hugging frozen statues is incredibly dramatic and might be a symbolic representation of your philosophy rather than a literal, daily practice. Academics continue to discuss how much of the Cynic asks was practical and how much was performative. Was your goal truly to harden your own body, or was it primarily to shock the public and force them to question their own reliance on comfort? The most likely answer is both. Your body was your canvas. When you were hungry, your stomach crumbled for all to hear. When you were cold, you shivered openly. When you were hot, you sweated. You refused to hide these natural, physical realities. In doing so, you were demonstrating that a human being is a part of nature, not separate from it. You treated your body not as a master to be pampered, but as a slave to be commanded. You were in a constant process of breaking its will, its desire for comfort and ease. You once compared this physical training to the training of an athlete. An Olympic wrestler endures pain and exhaustion to strengthen his body for the games. You were doing the same, but the prize wasn't an olive wreath. The prize was apatheia, a state of inner tranquility that comes from being immune to the disturbances of fortune, both good and bad. As you lie in the hot sand, feeling the sun bake your skin, you are not suffering. You are victorious. Every discomfort you willingly embrace is a chain you break. You are liberating yourself, one hardship at a time. You are proving that the human spirit can be master of its physical vessel, and that true strength is not found in avoiding pain, but in meeting it head-on, and with a stubborn, philosophical grin. One day, someone, perhaps a curious student, a heckler in the crowd, or an official taking a census, approaches you with a standard, bureaucratic question, "Where are you from?" In ancient Greece, this was not small talk. Your answer defined you. It connected you to your polis, your city-state. Your identity was your citizenship. You were an Athenian, a Spartan, a Corinthian. This label came with a whole package of history, obligations, rivalries, and pride. The questioner expects you to say, "I am from Sinope, the city that exiled you." This would immediately mark you as an outsider, a man without a home, a person stripped of his civic identity. It would be a confession of your diminished status. You, however, refuse to play this game. You don't give the expected answer. Instead, you look the person in the eye and deliver a reply that is so radical, so ahead of its time, that it must have sounded like pure madness. You say, "I am a citizen of the world." Cosmopolites. The word you use is a compound of cosmos, the world, the universe, and polites, citizen. You are the first person in recorded history to ever use this term to describe yourself. In a world defined by fierce city-state loyalties and a sharp distinction between Greek and barbarian, you have just erased all the lines. You have declared your allegiance not to a city, not to a nation, but to the entire human race, to the universe itself. This is arguably your most profound and enduring philosophical contribution. You are rejecting the narrow, tribalistic identities that cause so much conflict and prejudice. You're arguing that the only community that truly matters is the community of all rational beings. The laws of Athens or Sinope are merely local customs. No. The only law you recognize is the universal law of nature, or reason, which governs the entire cosmos. This was a shocking statement. For a Greek man to disavow his polis was almost unthinkable. It was the source of his rights, his protection, his very identity. To be apolitical, without a city, was to be a non-person, a social phantom. But you took this state of being stateless, which had been forced upon you by your exile, and you turned it into a positive, universal ideal. You weren't homeless, you were at home everywhere. This idea of cosmopotamuscence directly challenged the teachings of Plato and Aristotle. For them, the polis was the only place where a human being could truly flourish and live a virtuous life. The good life was inseparable from being a good citizen of a specific, well-ordered state. You completely disagreed. You argued that relying on a state for your virtue was a crutch. True virtue was internal, self-sufficient, and universal. It shouldn't matter whether you were in Athens, Persia, or India. The principles of a good life were the same everywhere. Here's a little-known tidbit that highlights your commitment to this idea. You were once a witness to a lawsuit. When the court clerk asked you to state your name and origin for the record, you didn't just say Diogenes the Cosmopolitan. You gave your name, and for your origin, you said, a resident of the cosmos, currently staying in the part of it known as Athens. You were being deliberately pedantic universal, reducing the great city of Athens to a mere temporary address in the vastness of space. It was a subtle but powerful way to diminish the self-importance of the Athenian state. The historical debate around this concept is fascinating. Did you invent the word cosmopolites on the spot, or were you drawing on an existing, perhaps unrecorded, philosophical idea? Most scholars credit you with its popularization, if not its outright invention. Later philosophers, particularly the Stoics, would pick up this concept and make it a cornerstone of their philosophy. The Stoic idea of a universal city of Zeus, where all rational beings are citizens, is a direct intellectual descendant of your pithy, groundbreaking statement. You planted the seed that would grow into one of the most powerful ideas in Western thought. So when the official stands there, pen hovering over his wax tablet, waiting for you to name your city, you offer him the universe. You are refusing to be categorized, to be put in a box. You are in exile. Yes, but you have reframed your exile as the ultimate form of liberation. You haven't lost a city. You've gained the world. Your questioner probably just shakes his head and walks away, muttering about your madness. He can't comprehend it. His mind is trapped by maps, by rules, by the names of cities. He can't see what you see, that these divisions are imaginary. The sun that shines on Athens is the same sun that shines on Sparta and on the farthest reaches of the Persian Empire. The ground beneath your feet is all part of the same earth. By calling yourself a citizen of the world, you are simply stating the obvious, a truth that everyone else has been conditioned to ignore. You are not a man from Sinope. You are a man from everywhere. Athens prided itself on its culture of public speaking. The agora, the PNYX hill where the assembly met, and the city's theaters were all stages for rhetoric, debate, and performance. Orators and playwrights were celebrities, masters of language who could sway crowds and shape public opinion. You, naturally, saw this as yet another arena of human vanity and pretense, ripe for disruption. You became the ultimate heckler, a master of nonverbal, and sometimes very verbal, criticism. Your goal was not just to disagree with a speaker's ideas, but to shatter the very atmosphere of reverence and seriousness that surrounded them. One of your favorite targets was the popular lecture circuit. Ambitious orators would rent a hall, charge an admission fee, and deliver grand speeches on lofty topics. You would often attend these events, but never as a passive audience member. You would find a spot, unwrap a piece of fish or some bread, and begin eating noisily. The crinkling of your pouch, the loud chewing. It was a deliberate act of sonic warfare against the speaker's polished rhetoric. It was a way of saying, your abstract words are less important than my real, physical hunger. The act itself was a critique, reminding the audience of the basic, grubby realities of life that the speaker was trying to gloss over with fancy language. On other occasions, your disruptions were more theatrical. There is a story of a particularly pompous lecturer who was giving a long-winded speech about the heavens and meteorological phenomena. As he was speaking, you stood up, and with your back to him, you began to point intently at the sky, as if you saw something amazing, a strange cloud, a portent, an omen. Soon, the entire audience turned away from the speaker to look where you were pointing. Of course, there was nothing there. When everyone turned back, confused, you had made your point. Their attention was fickle, easily distracted by nonsense. If you could command their focus by simply pointing at nothing, what did that say about the true substance of the speaker's words? Your most famous act of theatrical sabotage, however, took place not at a lecture, but at the theater itself. The theater of Dionysus was a sacred space, home to the great festivals where the plays of Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides were performed. It was a cornerstone of Athenian cultural and religious life. One day, during a performance, the audience was streaming out of the theater. As the massive crowd pushed its way towards the exits, you began to push your way in, fighting against the tide. You were creating chaos, an obstacle in the smooth flow of the crowd. Someone, annoyed by your bizarre behavior, shouted at you, "Diogenes, why are you pushing your way in when everyone else is coming out?" You shouted back your reply, a line that perfectly summarizes your entire life's philosophy. "This is the way I have tried to live my whole life." You were making a metaphorical point through a physical act. Society, the crowd, is always moving in one direction, towards wealth, fame, comfort, convention. Your life's practice was to deliberately move in the opposite direction, to go against the current. You were fighting your way into a life of simplicity and virtue while everyone else was rushing out towards a life of empty distractions. This is a great place to touch upon a little known fact about ancient Greek theaters. They weren't just for plays. They were often used for public meetings, assemblies, and even legal proceedings. So when you were disrupting the theater, you weren't necessarily interrupting a sacred drama. You could have been crashing a political rally or a public forum, which makes your protest even more pointedly political. The academic debate here often revolves around the nature of your criticism. Were you a literary critic with a unique method, or just a public nuisance? Some scholars argue that you were, in your own way, one of Greece's most effective critics. While others wrote reviews, you performed them. You didn't analyze the flaws in a speaker's logic. You exposed the absurdity of the entire situation. You were a master of what the Russians would later call the familiarization, making the familiar strange in order to force people to see it in a new light. By eating in a lecture or walking the wrong way, you were breaking the spell of social hypnosis. You were a constant, unpredictable threat to the self-importance of Athens' intellectual elite. They could never be sure when you would show up to puncture their pomposity. You were once seen entering a theater backwards. When asked why, you simply replied, "You Athenians are so good at everything else. I thought I'd try doing something better than you backwards." It's a nonsensical, almost surrealist joke, but the underlying mockery of Athenian pride is sharp as a razor. You saw public speech not as a noble art, but as a dangerous to love manipulation. Orators used beautiful words to hide ugly truths and to flatter the public for their own gain. You called them the servants of the mob. Your disruptions were a form of public service, a way of waking the audience up from the soporific effects of rhetoric. You were the grit in the oyster of Athenian culture, the irritating presence that, you hoped, might just produce a pearl of wisdom. For a man who held most of humanity in contempt, you had a surprisingly soft spot for certain members of society. You forged strange, unspoken alliances with those who, like you, lived on the margins. Your friendships were not with the powerful or the sophisticated, but with the simplest and most honest creatures in Athens, the dogs, the poor, and the children. Your bond with dogs was the most obvious. You took their name, Cynic, as a compliment and modeled your life on their shameless, natural existence. The street dogs of the Agora were your constant companions. You shared your scraps of food with them. You slept near them for warmth and a sense of security. You understood them. They didn't care about your past, your lack of wealth, or your strange philosophy. They responded to you on the most basic level, as a fellow creature sharing the same space, the same sun, the same struggle for survival. There's a famous story that illustrates this bond. One day, you see a group of young men standing in a circle, watching a dog. The dog is in distress, holding one of its paws in the air. The men are laughing, finding the animal's pain amusing. You walk over, push through the crowd, and kneel beside the dog. You gently take its paw and find a thorn embedded in it. You carefully remove the thorn, and the dog licks your hand in gratitude before running off. You then stand up and face the young man. You don't lecture them on compassion. You just give them a look of withering contempt and walk away. Your actions spoke for themselves. You had more in common with the injured animal than with these civilized humans who took pleasure in its suffering. Your relationship with the poor and the destitute was more complex. You were one of them, but you were also their teacher. You didn't form a community of beggars. You were always a solitary figure. But you treated them with a respect you never afforded the rich. When you begged, you were not just asking for food for yourself. You were challenging the wealthy on behalf of all who had nothing. You were their champion, their public relations disaster, forcing the comfortable to confront the existence of the uncomfortable. You saw them not as failures, but as people who were simply less entangled in the corrupting web of nomos. Then there were the children. You had a particular fondness for them, seeing in them a natural wisdom that adults had lost. They hadn't yet been fully conditioned by society as absurd rules. They were spontaneous, honest, and lived in the present moment. You learned from them, as you did from the boy at the fountain who taught you to discard your cup. A lesser-known, charming anecdote tells of you sitting in your POS when a group of children crept up and, as a prank, declared that they had sold you to a man who was walking by. You, playing along with their game, immediately got up, grabbed your walking stick, and started following the man down the street, proclaiming, "I am on my way to my new master." You understood the spirit of their game and joined in, showing a playfulness and lack of ego that most adults could never muster. You saw that their transaction was no more or less absurd than the real buying and selling that happened all over the agora. This affinity for the marginalized is a key, and often underappreciated, aspect of your philosophy. While Plato was designing an ideal republic ruled by a philosopher king, you were building a republic in the real world, populated by dogs, beggars, and children. Your political science was practiced on the streets, not in a classroom. Scholars who study the social history of Athens find this aspect of your life particularly interesting. You provide a rare glimpse into the lives of those who are usually invisible in the historical record. The great histories are written about generals, politicians, and wealthy patrons. You, by choosing to associate with the outcasts, force us to see the city from the bottom up. Your life is a testament to the existence of a whole world of human, in koinoin, experience that official Athenian culture preferred to ignore. The academic question that arises is whether your preference for these groups was a form of genuine compassion or simply another tool for your philosophical project. Were you a Protestant Francis, filled with love for the humble? Or were you a cold rationalist who saw dogs and children as useful, uncomplicated examples of life according to nature? The truth, as with most things about you, is likely somewhere in the middle. You are not a sentimentist. You saw value not in their poverty or simplicity itself, but in their freedom from the mental chains that bound the successful citizens of Athens. You sit in the sun, a scruffy dog dozing at your feet. A child walks by and offers you a fig, not out of pity, but out of a simple, shared sense of humanity. You accept it with a nod. These are your people. They are not impressed by rhetoric. They do not care for social status. They are real. In a city full of actors and hypocrites, you have found your tribe among the honest, the innocent, and the four-legged. They are the true citizens of your cosmos. Your life is a magnet for the curious, the disillusioned, and the rebellious. While many Athenians dismiss you as a madman, a small number of people see something profound in your madness. They see a man who is truly free, and they are drawn to your flame. You never sought to establish a formal school like Plato's Academy, but you inevitably attracted followers. The most famous of these was a man named Crates of Thebes. Crates was everything you were not. He was born into one of the wealthiest and most respected families in his city. He was a man of high standing, with a large inheritance and a promising future in conventional society. But he was deeply unhappy. He felt trapped by his wealth and the expectations that came with it. One day, Crates travels to Athens and sees you. He watches your daily routine, your shameless public meals, your witty and cutting remarks to the powerful, your simple existence in the POS. He doesn't see a beggar. He sees a king. He sees a man who possesses nothing but is master of himself. It's a revelation. He realizes that his wealth is not a blessing, but a burden. He approaches you, not as a student to a master in a formal sense, but as someone seeking a radical cure for his spiritual sickness. Your teaching is not through lectures or texts, but through living example. You show him that everything he values, money, property, reputation, is not only unnecessary but is actively an obstacle to happiness. Inspired by your example, Crates makes a decision that shocks the Greek world. He returns to his home city of Thebes and liquidates his entire fortune. The story goes that he took all his money and either gave it away to his fellow citizens or, in a more dramatic version of the tale, simply threw it into the sea, declaring, "I am drowning my possessions so they do not drown me." It's an act of spectacular renunciation. He then returns to Athens with nothing but a simple cloak and staff, and becomes your most devoted disciple. He adopts the Cynic lifestyle completely. He too lives on the streets, begs for his food, and engages in the practice of shamelessness. He even earns his own nickname, the door opener, because he would make a habit of walking, uninvited, into people's houses to offer them unsolicited, and probably unwelcome, philosophical advice. Your relationship with Crates is unique. You are not a traditional teacher. You are more like a spiritual catalyst. You didn't tell him what to do. Your existence showed him what was possible. This highlights a core tenet of Cynicism. It was the set of doctrines to be learned, but a way of life to be lived. The story of Crates becomes even more interesting with the introduction of Hipparchia of Marwania. She was also from a wealthy, aristocratic family and was the sister of one of Crates' other students. She fell completely and utterly in love with Crates, not for his looks or his family name, which she had discarded, but for his mind and his lifestyle. She was captivated by the raw honesty and freedom of the Cynic way. This is where a truly remarkable and unconventional love story begins. Hipparchia's parents were horrified. They wanted her to marry a rich, respectable suitor. They forbade her from seeing Crates, the homeless street philosopher. But Hipparchia was as stubborn and unconventional as he was. She threatened her parents that if they did not let her marry Crates, she would take her own life. Seeing that she was serious, her parents went to Crates and begged him to talk her out of it. Crates, ever the pragmatist, tried to dissuade her. He stood before her, took off his cloak to reveal his lean, hardened philosopher's body, and said, "This is the bridegroom, and these are his possessions. Make your choice." He was showing her the reality of the life she was choosing. No comfort, no luxury, nothing. Hipparchia was undeterred. She chose him. She abandoned her family's wealth, donned the simple, single garment tunic of the Cynics, and joined Crates on the streets. They became philosophia's first, and perhaps only, power couple of poverty. They were partners in every sense, living, traveling, and philosophizing together. This was incredibly scandalous and revolutionary. A respectable woman living openly on the streets with a man, engaging in public philosophical debate, was unheard of. The existence of followers like Crates and Hipparchia is a crucial part of your legacy, but it's also a source of academic debate. How organized was the Cynic movement? Was it a real succession of teachers and students, or just a loose collection of like-minded individuals who were inspired by your example? Some scholars argue for a clear lineage. Antisthenes taught you. You taught Crates. Crates taught Sinope, who would go on to found Stoicism. Others argue that it was much more informal, a tradition passed on through anecdote and personal inspiration rather than formal instruction. Your influence was more viral than institutional. You, Crates, and Hipparchia formed an unlikely trio at the heart of a philosophical revolution. You started it, but they proved it was repeatable. They demonstrated that your radical path to freedom was just a unique expression of your own eccentric personality. It was a viable, if difficult, choice that others could make. You watched Crates, the former millionaire, happily munching on a handful of lupin seeds. You see him in debate with Hipparchia, their minds sharp and their spirits free. You never asked for followers, but you got them anyway. You have proven that an idea, the idea of radical simplicity and self-mastery, can be more powerful and more valuable than all the gold in Thebes. As the years pass, your exile from Sinope, the event that kick-started your entire philosophical journey, remains a defining part of your story. Most people see it as a mark of shame, a criminal past that you've tried to live down through eccentric acts. But in your own mind, you begin to reframe the entire narrative. You start to see your banishment not as a punishment, but as a prophecy fulfilled. You think back to that fateful trip to the oracle at Delphi. The memory, once a source of confusion and pain, now becomes a source of profound clarity. The priestess's words, "Perichiraxus no mismaten," echo in your mind. To face the currency. In your youth, you and your father took this literally. You tampered with the physical coins, the no mismo Sinope. You scraped the silver, altered the stamp, and broke the city's laws. The result was disgrace and exile. You followed the letter of the oracle's command and it led to your ruin. But now, living in your Pythos in Athens, you understand the oracle's true, deeper meaning. The oracle was talking about money. It was talking about values. The word nomisma, currency, is derived from the word nomos, lure, custom, convention. The oracle wasn't telling you to vandalize coins. It was giving you a divine mission to challenge, question, and deface all of society's conventions. You realized you had been a fool. You started by defacing the symbol, the little silver coin, when you should have been defacing the system it represented. Your crime in Sinope was a petty, misguided dress rehearsal for your real life's work. Your exile was a punishment. It was the god's way of kicking you out of the small pond of Sinope and throwing you into the great ocean of Athens, where the real work needed to be done. The banishment was a blessing. It was the catalyst that forced you to understand the oracle's true, philosophical meaning. This reinterpretation becomes a key part of your public persona. When people try to mock you for your past, you now have the ultimate comeback. One day, a heckler shouts, "The people of Sinope condemned you to exile." You smile wryly and shoot back, "And I condemn them to stay there." In one brilliant retort, you have completely flipped the narrative. They think they punished you by casting you out, but you see it as having escaped. They are the ones who are truly imprisoned, trapped in their provincial city with its petty rules and conventional values. You are the one who is free, living as a citizen of the cosmos. You also apply this reinterpretation directly to your father's fate. He was the master mentor, the man in charge of upholding the value of the currency. His crime was a betrayal of that trust. But in your new understanding, you see him as a fellow philosopher, albeit an unwilling one. You were once asked what you learned from your father. Your answer was, how to commit a crime without being unhappy. It's a dark, humorous line, but it speaks to your ability to find philosophical lessons in even the most sordid of family histories. This reevaluation of a past trauma is a fascinating psychological process. It's a powerful example of what modern psychology might call cognitive reframing. You took the worst event of your life and turned it into the most empowering one. This intellectual jiu-jitsu is central to your resilience. The historical debate around the oracle story is significant. Did you really go to Delphi? Did the oracle really say those words? Or did you, or your followers, invent the entire story later to give your philosophical mission a divine sanction? It's a classic chicken and egg problem. Did the prophecy lead to the philosophy, or did the philosophy create the prophecy? Many scholars are skeptical of the story's literal truth. It seems a little too perfect, a little too neat. It provides a tidy, almost mythological origin story for cynicism. Attributing your life's path to the will of Apollo gave it a weight and legitimacy it might otherwise have lacked. Regardless of its authenticity, the story serves a crucial purpose. It shows that you are not just a random eccentric or a social misfit. You are a man with a destiny. Your shamelessness, your poverty, your public provocations, they are not signs of madness, but the deliberate actions of someone on a divine mission. You are not just breaking the rules. You are defacing the currency of human values, just as the god Apollo commanded. This new understanding gives you a serene sense of purpose. You are no longer just Diogenes the exile. You are Diogenes the divine agent of chaos, sent to expose the counterfeit values of society. Every convention you break, every hypocrite you expose, every time you choose nature over custom, you are fulfilling your destiny. You are stamping your own image on the world, not on a piece of silver, but on the consciousness of humanity. You have taken the crime that defined your past and transformed it into the philosophy that will define your future, and the future of Western thought. The oracle at Delphi, it turns out, knew exactly what it was doing. As you continue your philosophical performance on the streets of Athens, you start to draw comparisons between yourself and one of the most revered figures in Greek culture, the mythological hero Heracles, better known by his Roman name, Hercules. This isn't an act of arrogance. It's a carefully chosen analogy to explain the nature and purpose of your life's work. On the surface, the comparison seems absurd. Heracles was a demigod of immense physical strength, famous for his 12 labors, slaying monsters, cleaning stables, and even descending into the underworld. You are a mortal man, living in a pot, whose primary activities are sunbathing and insulting people. What could you possibly have in common? You'll see a deep, structural parallel. Heracles was a figure who lived a life of toil and hardship, Poenoes. He was tasked with impossible challenges, forced to wander the earth, and was constantly at odds with the established order, represented by the petty and vengeful goddess Hera. Yet through his struggles, he brought a kind of order to the world, ridding it of monsters and making it safer for humanity. His suffering was purposeful, and it ultimately led to his deification. You see your own life in the same terms. Yet you, too, have chosen a life of Poenoes. Your self-imposed hardship, the exposure to heat and cold, the poverty, the constant social friction, are your version of the 12 labors. You are not fighting physical monsters like the Hydra or the Nemean lion. You are fighting the monsters of the soul, ignorance, dignosia, pleasure, hedon, and desire. The Pithumia. These, in your view, are the true beasts that plague humanity. Your labors are the daily battles against convention. When you embrace a frozen statue, you are wrestling with the monster of comfort-seeking. When you live in a Pythagoras, you are slaying the monster of materialism. When you speak truth to Alexander the Great, you are confronting the monster of vanity and worldly power. This reframing of your struggle is brilliant. It elevates your seemingly bizarre negative actions into something heroic and positive. You are not just a critic tearing things down. You are a spiritual warrior cleansing the world of its internal chaos. You are a Heracles of the mind. A lesser-known detail of this comparison involves the traditional iconography of Heracles. The hero is almost always depicted carrying a club and wearing the skin of the Nemean lion. You, in turn, adopted your own signature props, the simple, rough cloak, tribune, and the sturdy wooden staff. This was your version of the hero's gear. Your cloak was your lion's skin, a symbol of your rejection of luxury. Your staff was your club, a tool for support, for defense, and for pointing out the follies of mankind. You were consciously creating a visual parallel between the mythological hero and the street philosopher. The choice of Heracles as a role model was also a slap in the face to the more refined, intellectual schools of philosophy. Plato and his followers might look to serene, wise figures like Socrates or even the gods like Apollo as their ideals. You chose a much earthier, more violent, and more troubled hero. Heracles was known for his fits of madness and his excessive appetites as much as for his heroism. He was a figure of extreme passions and extreme suffering. This appealed to you. You believed that the path to virtue was not a calm, rational ascent, but a messy, painful, and strenuous battle. Academics have long debated the sincerity of this comparison. Were you genuinely seeing yourself as a heroic figure, or was it a form of high-level, ironic performance? Was it a way of mocking the Greek obsession with heroes by applying the label to a figure as anti-heroic as yourself? The scholarly consensus leans towards a mix of both. You were likely sincere in your belief that the philosophical life was a heroic struggle. But you were also undoubtedly aware of the provocative, almost comical, irony of comparing a beggar in a barrel to the greatest of the Greek heroes. It was a way to both legitimize your path and satirize the very notion of heroism at the same time. This self-identification with Heracles sets you apart. It shows that your philosophy is not one of passive contemplation, but of active, aggressive engagement with the world. You are on a campaign. You are here to do a job. You see yourself as a doctor for sick souls, and your methods are often painful, like a surgeon setting a broken bone. So when people see you, dirty and defiant, they are meant to see more than just a beggar. They are meant to see a hero in disguise. They are meant to understand that the real monsters are not out there in distant lands. They are inside us. They are the conventions we blindly follow, the desires that enslave us, and the lies we tell ourselves. And you, Diogenes the dog, armed with nothing but a stick and a sharp tongue, are the Heracles who has come to slay them. You may not win a place on Mount Olympus, but you are fighting for something far more valuable. A world free from the tyranny of its own foolishness. Your life in the Pythagoras is not static. It is a life lived in deep connection with the rhythms of the earth. While the rest of Athens marks time with market days, religious festivals, and political assemblies, you mark it by the slow, inexorable turning of the seasons. Your single room, open-air home makes you exquisitely sensitive to the subtle shifts in the world around you. Spring in Athens arrives as a gentle release. The oppressive winter chill recedes, and the air becomes soft and fragrant with the scent of blooming thyme and wildflowers on the nearby hills. For you, spring is a time of ease. The sun is warm but not yet punishing. You can lie on the still cool earth and feel the life returning to it. The rains wash the dust from the city, and your Pythagoras, exposed to the elements, gets a thorough cleaning. You watch the Athenians emerge from their winter confinement, shedding their heavy cloaks, their moods lighter. You see it all with a detached amusement. They are celebrating a release from a prison they built for themselves. You, having never been imprisoned by comfort, simply enjoy the change in the weather. Then comes the summer. The Greek sun asserts its full dominance. The sky becomes a vast, brassy dome, and the heat is a physical presence. This is the season of your most intense asks, your physical training. You roll in the hot sand, deliberately seeking out the discomfort that others flee. The inside of your ceramic jar becomes an oven. At midday, when the agora is deserted by all but the most desperate, you are in your element. Summer, for you, is a forge. It's a time to test your endurance, to burn away the weakness of the soul. You watch the wealthy Athenians retreat to shaded courtyards or fan themselves languidly, and you see the weakness of a life built on avoiding hardship. Autumn brings a different mood. The fierce heat relents, and a golden, melancholy light bathes the city. It's the season of the harvest. The agora overflows with figs, grapes, and olives. For you, it is a time of relative plenty. The generosity of the city is at its peak, and your begging is often more fruitful. The air grows crisp, a reminder of the coming cold. You watch the leaves on the plane trees turn yellow and fall, a stark, simple lesson in the cycles of life and decay. While others might see sadness in this, you see the beauty of nature's honesty. Nothing pretends to be permanent. Winter is the great test. The rains can be frequent and cold. A damp chill permeates everything. Your single, thin cloak is your only protection. This is when your philosophy is tested most severely. Can you be self-sufficient when your body is shivering? Can you maintain your inner tranquility when the wind whips around your clay pot? You embrace it. You hug the cold statues. You remind yourself that this, too, is just a sensation. It is nature, in its harsh, unpitying aspect. Surviving the winter on the streets is your final exam in the school of minimalism. and you pass it year after year. This deep attunement to the seasons is a part of your philosophy that is rarely discussed, but is absolutely central to your life. It's a form of non-intellectual, embodied wisdom. A weird little fact about ancient Greek calendars can highlight this. Most Greek city-states had their own local calendars, often tied to religious festivals and political cycles. They were complex and often out of sync with each other. You, by living according to the sun and the seasons, were following the one, true, universal calendar. You were living on cosmic time, not political time. Scholars who focus on eco-philosophy or environmental history see you as a fascinating, proto-environmentalist figure. Your life was a radical experiment in reducing one's footprint to almost nothing. You consumed little, created almost no waste, and lived in a way that was completely integrated with the natural environment, even within a bustling city. The academic question is whether this was a conscious environmental ethic, or simply a byproduct of your primary goal of achieving personal virtue. Did you care about nature as an abstract concept, or were you just using it as a tool, a gymnasium for your soul? It's hard to say. The language to discuss environmentalism as we know it didn't exist. But your life, in practice, was a masterclass in sustainable living. You observe the subtle changes that others miss. You know the exact spot on the steps of the metro one that catches the first morning light in winter. You know the particular call of the swift that signals the arrival of spring. You can tell the time of day by the length of the shadows. You have stripped away all the artificial distractions, the clocks, the calendars, the social appointments, and replaced them with a direct, sensory connection to the world. Your Pith OS is not just a shelter, it's an observatory. From its mouth, you watch the slow, majestic procession of the constellations across the night sky. You feel the wind shift as a storm rolls in from the sea. You are a human barometer, a living sundial. While the rest of Athens is busy with its human dramas, you are plugged into a much larger, more ancient story, the story of the earth itself, turning and turning through its endless, beautiful, and indifferent cycles. Much of your day is spent in an activity that looks, to the outside world, like pure idleness. You are sunbathing, lying on the ground near your POS, often with your cloak cast aside. You simply soak in the warmth and light of the sun. For the bustling, ambitious citizens of Athens, this is the ultimate sign of a wasted life. A proper man is always busy, engaging in commerce, participating in politics, training at the gymnasium, or debating philosophy. To do nothing is to be useless. But your idleness is not laziness. It is a profound and deliberate philosophical practice. It is a form of active contemplation, a state of being that you consider superior to the frantic, meaningless doing of everyone else. When you are sunbathing, you are not just tanning your skin. You are engaged in a silent dialogue with the cosmos. The sun is the ultimate source of life and energy, a free and universal gift from the gods. By basking in its light, you are participating in a fundamental reality that the busy people, enclosed in their homes and shops, ignore. You are absorbing not just warmth, but a kind of cosmic truth. This practice is a direct critique of the Athenian work ethic. You see the endless activity of the agora not as productive, but as a form of distraction. People keep themselves busy to avoid confronting the fundamental questions of their own existence. They chase money, power, and reputation because they are afraid of the silence, afraid of being alone with their own thoughts. Your public napping and sunbathing is a form of protest against this culture of busyness. It's a declaration that the most important work a person can do is internal. One day, a prominent Athenian, a man of great affairs, walks by and sees you lying on the ground. He scoffs in disgust. Are you doing nothing? Diogenes. What a waste. You open one eye and look at him. You don't get angry. You simply ask him a question. And what are you doing? The man puffs out his chest. I am on my way to the market to arrange a shipment of grain. Then I must meet with my banker. After that, I have a lawsuit to oversee. And tonight, I am hosting a dinner for an important general. You listen patiently to his list of self-important tasks. When he has finished, you ask another question. And why are you doing all of that? The man seems puzzled by the question. To make money, of course. To increase my standing in the city. To secure a good future for my children. And then what? You press. Well, the man says, if I am successful enough, one day I will be able to retire. I will have enough wealth and influence that I will not have to work anymore. I will be able to relax, enjoy the sun, and do whatever I please. You smile, a slow, knowing smile. You say, closing your eye again, I am already there. The man is left speechless. You have just dismantled his entire life's ambition in a few simple sentences. He is working himself to the bone, enduring stress and anxiety, all in the hope of one day achieving the state of peaceful leisure that you are already enjoying, for free, right now. You have taken a shortcut to happiness, while he is on a long, arduous, and ultimately pointless detour. This concept of purposeful idleness is a very subtle and advanced part of your philosophy. A little-known term associated with cynicism is audiophobia, which means indifference to indifferent things. Wealth, health, reputation, even life and death. These are indifferent because they have no bearing on your virtue. The only thing that matters is the state of your soul. By doing nothing, you are actively practicing audiophobia. You are demonstrating your complete indifference to the goals and ambitions that drive the rest of the world. The historical debate here centers on whether you were advocating for a completely passive life. Were you telling people to abandon all work and just lie in the sun? Not exactly. The academic view is that you weren't against work itself, but against work that was disconnected from virtue. You performed your own kind of work, the work of philosophy, of challenging conventions, of training your soul. Your idleness was the quiet, contemplative part of that work. It was the charging of your spiritual batteries. You were advocating for a re-evaluation of what constitutes productive activity. Is it more productive to close a business deal or to achieve a state of inner peace? For you, the answer was obvious. So you lie there, under the brilliant Attic sky. The sounds of the agora, the shouting, the hammering, the rumbling of carts, fade into a distant hum. You are not asleep. You are acutely aware. You feel the warmth of the sun, the texture of the earth beneath you, the gentle breeze on your skin. You are fully present in the moment. The past is gone. The future is not yet here. All that exists is this perfect, simple, sun-drenched now. The busy Athenians rush past you, their faces etched with worried ambition. They see a lazy beggar. They don't see a man who has mastered the art of living. They don't understand that you are not doing nothing. You are doing the most important thing of all. You are being. And in the quiet hum of that afternoon, you have found a peace that all their money cannot buy and all their power cannot command. Your life, for all its philosophical consistency, is not without its dramatic, unexpected turns. You are not entirely the master of your own fate. One day, you decide to take a sea voyage. Perhaps you are heading to the island of Aegean, a short trip from Athens, or maybe you have some other purpose in mind. The reasons are lost to history. You are on a small boat, crossing a stretch of the Aegean Sea. The journey starts peacefully enough. The water is calm. The sky is clear. You are probably sitting on the deck, observing the sea and the sky, lost in your own thoughts. But your contemplative peace is about to be shattered. On the horizon, another ship appears. It's moving fast, powered by a bank of oars. As it gets closer, you see that it is not a merchant vessel. It's a pirate ship. Panic erupts on your small boat. The crew and other passengers scramble, knowing they are defenseless. Pirates in the Aegean were a constant menace, a brutal fact of life. They would seize ships, steal the cargo, and either kill the passengers or, if they looked valuable enough, sell them into slavery. The pirate ship pulls alongside. Men armed with swords and clubs swarm over the side. They are rough, violent, and efficient. They quickly subdue the crew. You, however, show no fear. You sit there, calm and observant, as if you were watching a rather distasteful play. Your lack of panic is so unusual that it makes you stand out. The pirates round everyone up. They look you over. You are old. You are dressed in a single, ragged cloak. You have no possessions other than your staff and a small satchel. By all appearances, you are worthless. Most pirates would have simply killed you and thrown you overboard to save the rations. But your demeanor intrigues the pirate captain. You carry yourself with an air of authority that completely contradicts your appearance. When the captain barks an order at you, you don't flinch. You look him in the eye with an expression of mild annoyance, as if he is the one who is inconveniencing you. This is the ultimate test of your philosophy. You have trained yourself to be indifferent to fortune, but this is not a theoretical exercise. This is a man with a sword at your throat. Your apatheia, your inner tranquility, is now facing a live fire-stress test, and you pass it with flying colors. You are herded onto the pirate ship with the other captives. The ship sets a course for Crete, which at the time was home to one of the largest and most notorious slave markets in the Greek world. During the journey, you do not behave like a captive. You are said to have strolled around the deck as if you owned the ship. You critique the pirates' diet, telling them that if they continue to eat such poor food, their own children will end up as degenerate as they are. You treat them not as your captors, but as your misguided students. This is where a strange, little-known detail emerges. According to some accounts, you actually tried to teach the pirates a lesson in leadership. You noticed that the pirate captain was a man of some natural ability but was prudent and disciplined. You supposedly took him aside and gave him unsolicited advice on how to be a more effective leader, based on principles of reason and justice. It's an absurd image. The captive philosopher coaching the pirate on how to run his criminal enterprise more virtuously. The historical accuracy of your capture by pirates is a topic of lively debate among classicists. Is it a true event, or is it a dramatic story invented by your followers to demonstrate your incredible courage and the universal applicability of your philosophy? The argument for it being true is that it was a common enough danger. Many prominent people in the ancient world had run-ins with pirates. The argument against it is that the stories of your behavior during the capture are just a little too perfect, a little too on-brand. They read like a cynic parable designed to show that a true philosopher is a king, even in chains. The consensus is that something like this probably happened, but the details have been polished to a high philosophical shine. As the pirate ship sails towards Crete, you are completely unfazed. You have lost your freedom of movement, but you have not lost the freedom of your mind, which is the only freedom you believe truly matters. You have always argued that most people are slaves to their desires, their fears, their ambitions. The pirates have put you in physical chains, but you are still freer than they are. They are the ones enslaved by their greed and violence. You understand the situation with perfect clarity. You are now cargo. You are a commodity to be sold. Your body, which you have trained and disciplined for so long, is about to be put on the auction block. For any other person, this would be the ultimate humiliation, the end of their life as they know it. For you, it's just another interesting, if inconvenient, chapter in your ongoing experiment in living. You are about to enter the slave market not as a victim, but as an observer, and as you will soon demonstrate, as a shockingly proactive participant. The pirate ship arrives at the slave market in Crete. It's a place of human misery, a cacophony of languages, and the stench of despair Captives from all over the Mediterranean are herded into pens like livestock, waiting to be inspected by potential buyers. Families are torn apart. People are stripped, prodded, and displayed. It is the ultimate expression of human beings as objects. You are put on the auction block along with the other captives. The auctioneer, a man who has seen it all, begins his sales pitch, but you immediately take control of the situation. This is not going to be a normal sale. The auctioneer asks you a standard question to assess your value. What can you do? What is your skill? HES, expecting an answer like I can cook, I am a scribe, or I am a skilled farmer. You look out at the crowd of buyers, wealthy men looking for cheap labor or household staff, and you give an answer that no one has ever heard in a slave market before. You declare, with a loud, clear voice, I can govern men. The crowd murmurs. The auctioneer is stunned into silence. It's an outrageous, arrogant, and completely nonsensical claim for a man in your position. You are a piece of property claiming to be a ruler. You then point to a man in the crowd. He is well dressed, with a refined, dignified air. He looks like a man of substance. You shout to the auctioneer, sell me to that man. He looks like he needs a master. The man you've pointed to is a wealthy Corinthian named Diogenes. He is intrigued by your bizarre and audacious behavior. He has never seen a slave try to sell himself, let alone insult a potential buyer in the process. He walks closer to the auction block. You have completely upended the power dynamic. You are not the passive object being sold. You are the active agent, choosing your own buyer. You are interviewing him. You are effectively auctioning off a position as your owner. Diogenes, amused and impressed, decides to play along. He engages you in a conversation. He asks you how you would prove your worth. You explain that just as a skilled navigator is sought after to pilot a ship, or a doctor to heal a body, a man in his position should seek out a skilled philosopher to govern his household and, more importantly, to educate his children in the principles of virtue. You are not selling your labor. You are selling your wisdom. This is a masterclass in what we might now call personal branding. You are positioning yourself not as a slave, but as a high-value consultant. You are creating a new, and previously non-existent, job category, philosopher in residence. This strange scene in the slave market is one of the most vivid in your biography. A little-known detail that adds to the richness of the story is how you were supposedly displayed. Some accounts say that you refused to stand like the other slaves. Instead, you sat down on the ground, as if you were holding court, which further reinforced your air of command and your refusal to accept the role of a submissive captive. The historical debate around this event is, of course, intense. Did this incredible scene really unfold as described? It seems almost a cinematic to be true. Skeptics argue that it's a philosophical fantasy, a story crafted to show the ultimate triumph of the cynic spirit over even the most degrading of circumstances. A philosopher's mind is so powerful, the story suggests, that it can turn the shackles of slavery into a crown. However, proponents of its truthfulness argue that such a bizarre, theatrical act is exactly the kind of thing you would do. Your entire life was a series of public performances designed to shock and instruct. Why would you stop just because you were in a slave market? Diogenes is won over. He sees that you are no ordinary man. He realizes that having you in his household would be an endless source of fascination, education, and probably exasperation. He buys you. The transaction is complete. The pirates get their money, and Diogenes gets his philosopher. You leave the slave market not as a broken man, but as a victorious one. You have faced the ultimate loss of freedom and have not only survived it with your dignity intact, but have managed to turn it into a promotion. You are no longer just a street philosopher living in a pot. You are now the master of a wealthy Corinthian household. As you walk away with your new owner, you are said to have remarked to him, "You must be careful. Just because you have bought a master does not mean you know how to use one. The power dynamic remains delightfully ambiguous. Who is the real master, and who is the real slave? In the strange new chapter of your life that is about to begin in Corinth, that question will be at the heart of everything. You arrive in Corinth at the home of Ximenes. Corinth is a bustling, wealthy port city, even more cosmopolitan and commercially driven than Athens. It's a place known for its luxury, its two major harbors, and its vibrant, sometimes decadent, culture. You have been transplanted from your simple pith OS into the heart of a wealthy, sophisticated household. Diogenes, true to your sales pitch, entrusts you with the most important task in a Greek household, the education of his sons. You are now a pedagogos, a tutor and guardian for the young boys. This role was typically filled by a trusted slave who would accompany the children to school, oversee their studies, and teach them morals and discipline. But you are not a typical pedagogue. Your educational philosophy is, like everything else about you, radical and unconventional. You are not interested in teaching the boys rhetoric, music, or the other hallmarks of a traditional aristocratic education. You see these as useless social graces. Your curriculum is brutally practical and focused on one thing: building a virtuous, self-sufficient, and physically tough character. You start with their bodies. You take them out of their comfortable home and subject them to a simplified version of your own asks-is. You make them exercise rigorously. You teach them to wear simple clothing, to walk barefoot, to drink only water, and to eat plain, simple food. You are stripping away the softness and luxury of their upbringing and teaching them to be hardy and resilient. You also take them on long hunting expeditions, not for sport, but to teach them self-reliance. Your lessons are experiential. You don't just talk about virtue, you create situations where they must practice it. Your academic instruction is equally stripped down. You teach them the basics, reading and writing, but you also make them memorize long passages from the great poets like Homer. However, you curate the passages carefully, choosing only those that highlight themes of heroism, courage, and simplicity. You discard anything you deem to be frivolous or immoral. You are giving them a literary education, but it's a Cynic's highlights reel. The story goes that the boys came to love and admire you deeply. You were not just a teacher. You were a role model of a completely different way of being a man. You taught them to be masters of themselves, not just future masters of a household. Diogenes is said to have been delighted with the results, often remarking that a good spirit, Agathos demon, had entered his house when you arrived. Living in Corinth also gives you a new stage for your public philosophy. You become a well-known figure in the city. You still spend much of your time in public, engaging in debates and arguments at the Crano, a cypress grove and gymnasium just outside the city walls. It's here that your famous encounter with Alexander the Great most likely took place. Your slavery didn't seem to confine you much. Diogenes gave you a very long leash. This period of your life in Corinth brings up a fascinating, little-known aspect of your legacy, your alleged written works. Diogenes Laertius lists a number of books attributed to you, including several tragedies, a book of letters, and a work called The Republic, which was supposedly a radical, anarchist vision of an ideal society where all institutions, including marriage and private property, were abolished. It was said to be so extreme that it made Plato's Republic look like a conservative pamphlet. However, the academic consensus today is almost unanimous. You probably never wrote a single word. The idea of you sitting down to write a book seems completely contrary to your entire philosophy. You believed in living, embodied wisdom, not in dead letters on a page. You performed your philosophy. You didn't write it down. The books attributed to you were likely written by your followers and admirers long after you were dead. Attempts to capture your spirit in a more traditional format. The lost works of Diogenes is a tantalizing idea, but it's almost certainly a fiction. Your work was ephemeral, etched into the memories of those who saw you, not onto papier scrolls. Your time in Corinth represents a different phase of your life. In Athens, you were the ultimate outsider, the lone critic howling at the walls of the city. In Corinth, you are an insider, albeit a very strange one. You have a formal role, a home, and a direct, practical influence on the next generation. You are no longer just a provocateur. You are a teacher. Does this mean you went soft? Did you sell out, trading your PithOS for a comfortable position in a rich man's house? You would argue no. You simply adapted your strategy. You saw an opportunity to deface the currency from within the system. By shaping the minds of Diogenes' sons, you were planting the seeds of cynic virtue in the heart of the next generation of the Corinthian elite. It was, perhaps, your most subversive act of all. You live out many of your remaining years in this strange dual role. A slave who is a master, a teacher who lives by example, a public nuisance who is also a private tutor. You have proven that your philosophy is not dependent on a specific location or a particular lifestyle. Whether you are living in a clay pot in Athens or a wealthy house in Corinth, the principles remain the same. Live according to nature, reject convention, and be the master of your own soul. The end of your life, like its beginning, is shrouded in a fog of conflicting stories and legends. You live to be a very old man, probably close to 90, which is a remarkable achievement for anyone in the ancient world, let alone someone who spent most of his life sleeping outdoors and eating a minimalist diet. How exactly you died becomes a final, philosophical Rorschach test, with each version of the story reflecting a different aspect of your character. There is no single, accepted account of your death. Instead, history offers us a menu of possibilities, ranging from the mundane to the bizarrely heroic. The first, and most straightforward, story is that you simply died of old age. After a long and strenuous life of philosophical performance, your body simply wore out. You passed away peacefully, perhaps in your sleep, having lived a life that was, by your own standards, complete and successful. This is the least dramatic, but perhaps the most likely, scenario. A second, more common story is that you died from the bite of a dog. In this version, you were trying to distribute a raw octopus to a pack of dogs, and in their eagerness, they bit your foot. The wound became infected, and you succumbed to a fever. There is a beautiful, tragic irony to this tale. To be killed by the very creatures you emulated, the cynics from whom you took your name, seems like a fitting, if unfortunate, end. It suggests a final, fatal union with the animal nature you so admired. A third, and far more theatrical, version of your death is that you committed suicide by holding your breath. The story presents you as the ultimate master of your own existence, in control of not only your life but the precise moment of your departure from it. You simply decided that your work was done, that you had nothing more to do for mortals, and you willed yourself to stop breathing. This is the ultimate act of apathy, i.e., an expression of complete indifference even to the instinct of survival itself. It's a heroic, almost superhuman end, portraying you as a philosopher who could conquer death by choosing it. Then there is the strangest story of all, that you died from eating a raw octopus. You were attempting to eat it as a demonstration of your commitment to a natural diet, rejecting the artificial of cooking. The octopus, however, proved too much for your aged digestive system, and you died of a severe stomach ailment. This story is both comic and tragic. It paints you as a man so committed to your principles that you followed them to a fatal, slightly absurd, conclusion. It's a cautionary tale about the limits of living according to nature. Which of these stories is true? We will never know. Academics and historians have been debating this for centuries. The multiplicity of death stories is, in itself, very telling. You were such a legendary figure that people couldn't agree on how such an extraordinary life should end. Each story is an attempt to write a fitting final chapter. The dog bite story emphasizes your cynic nature. The breath-holding story highlights your incredible self-mastery. The octopus story underscores your radical rejection of convention. The old age story is for the pragmatists. Your instructions for what to do with your body after your death were just as unconventional as your life. You gave your friends, including Diogenes, a few different options, all designed to make a final philosophical point. Your first instruction was to simply throw your body outside the city walls, unbuoyed, for the wild animals to feast on. When your friends expressed horror at this idea, protesting that you would be eaten by dogs and vultures, you replied with a laugh, "Then you must give me my staff, so I can wave them away." When they pointed out that you would be dead and unable to use the staff, you delivered the punchline, "If I am not aware of it, then what does it matter to me what happens to my body?" This was your final lesson in materialism. Your body was just a shell. Once you were gone, it was just meat, and its fate was of no consequence to you. Your other reported instruction was even stranger. You asked to be buried face down. When asked why, you supposedly explained that soon, everything that is down will be up. This is a cryptic, almost prophetic statement. Scholars have puzzled over its meaning for ages. Is it a reference to the political fortunes of Greece, perhaps predicting the rise of Macedon? Or is it a more general, philosophical statement about the inevitable reversal of all things, the cyclical nature of fortune? It's your last, enigmatic joke, a final piece of deliberate obscurity left for future generations to ponder. In the end, it doesn't matter how you died or what was done with your body. Your death, like your life, became a story, or rather, a collection of stories. You had become such a powerful symbol that you transcended the simple facts of your own biography. You had successfully defaced the currency of your own life, turning it from a simple narrative into a complex philosophical legend with multiple, competing interpretations. And for a man who loved to keep people guessing, that is the most fitting end of all. Your death did not mark the end of your story. In fact, in many ways, it was the beginning of your canonization as a philosophical saint. The people of Corinth, who had been by turns amused, annoyed, and inspired by you, chose to honor you in a way that would have surely made you smirk. The ultimate anti-establishment figure was given an official, establishment-approved memorial. The Corinthians erected a pillar of fine Parian marble near the Cranon, the gymnasium where you had spent so much of your time holding court. Marble was the stone of heroes, gods, and great statesmen. It was a material you would have considered an absurd luxury. The choice of material was the first layer of irony. On top of this tall, gleaming white pillar, they placed a sculpture. It was not a statue of you, the wise philosopher, draped in a toga, looking thoughtful. That would have been too conventional. Instead, they placed a marble dog. The dog was depicted in a resting pose, its head on its paws, but its eyes were open, watchful. It was a perfect tribute. It acknowledged your nickname, the dog, and immortalized the symbol you had so proudly embraced. It captured the essence of your philosophy, the watchdog for humanity, forever guarding against folly and pretense. It was a monument not to Diogenes the man, but to the spirit of Cynicism itself. Below the dog, on the pillar, they inscribed an epitaph. Several versions of this epitaph have been recorded, but one of the most famous, attributed to the poet Encyclopedia, reads, "Even bronze grows old with time, but your glory, Diogenes, will live for all eternity. For you alone taught mortals the lesson of self-sufficiency and showed them the easiest path of life." It's a beautiful, elegant tribute. It recognizes your most important contribution, teaching the world about self-mastery, the euterokia, and the simple light. The irony, of course, is that a man who scorned glory, doxa, was now being celebrated with an eternal fame made of stone. A man who threw away his last bowl because it was an unnecessary luxury now had a massive, exquisitely carved monument dedicated to him. You had become exactly the kind of revered, monumental figure you spent your entire life mocking. This memorial is a testament to the powerful, and often paradoxical, way that society absorbs its rebels. First, they are feared and ridiculed. Then, they are tolerated. Finally, they are sanitized and turned into safe, admirable icons. You, the wild, unpredictable, and often offensive street philosopher, were posthumously tamed, turned into a respectable figure in the history of thought, your sharpest edges smoothed over by the passage of time and the carving of marble. This process of taming is a key part of your legacy. A little-known fact is that your life and sayings became the basis for a whole genre of literature known as Cynic epistles, letters written in your name, or the names of your followers like crates, long after you were dead. These letters often presented a softer, more palatable version of your philosophy, focusing on a more gentle asceticism and moral virtue, while downplaying the more shocking and shameless aspects of your public behavior. You were being remade into a more conventional moral teacher. The academic debate about your legacy is centered on this very point, which is the real Diogenes, the radical, disruptive performer who lived in a pot and spit in rich men's faces, or the wise, proto-Stoic sage depicted in the more philosophical anecdotes and later writings. The answer is that you were both. Your legacy is a spectrum. At one end is the wild, anarchic figure of the streets. At the other is the wise teacher of self-sufficiency. Different philosophical schools, especially the Stoics, picked and chose the parts of your legacy that suited them. The Stoics loved your ideas about virtue, self-control, and indifference to fortune. They just quietly edited out the parts about public nudity and living in a jar. Your influence rippled through the centuries. You became a recurring character in art, literature, and philosophy, from Renaissance paintings depicting you with your lantern, to Enlightenment thinkers who saw you as a champion of reason against superstition. Every era has reinvented you in its own image. You are a philosophical mirror, reflecting the values and anxieties of whoever is looking at you. As you look down, perhaps from some philosophical afterlife, you see your marble monument. You see the daub, the silent, stony testament to a life lived without compromise. You see the flowery epitaph praising your glory. You probably let out a long, hearty laugh. They thought they were honoring you, but they had missed the final joke. The greatest monument to your life was not a pillar of stone. It was the uncomfortable questions you planted in the minds of everyone you met. The monument was the doubt, the flicker of realization that maybe, just maybe, the man in the pot had it all figured out. The day fades. The story of your life, with its sharp edges and defiant laughter, begins to soften, to dissolve into the gentle fabric of the approaching night. The hard marble of your monument seems to grow soft. The barking of the dogs in the agora fades into a distant, rhythmic hum. The bustling streets of Athens and Corinth, once so loud and vibrant, are now just echoes in a quiet space. The arguments with Plato, the sunlight you requested from Alexander, the splash of the water cupped in your hands, all these moments are now floating, untethered, like fireflies in the deepening twilight of your drowsiness. You are no longer on the hard ground or inside a cool ceramic pot. You are drifting in a warmer, kinder place, a place without hardship or the need for defiance. The stark lessons of your life, the rejection of comfort, the embrace of nature, have done their work. They have led you here, to a state of perfect, effortless tranquility. There are no more questions to ask, no more conventions to shatter. There is only a slow, gentle current carrying you forward into a deep and peaceful silence. The search for an honest man is over, for in this quiet state, there is no need for such distinctions. There is only rest. The lantern has been extinguished. Its job is done. The world and its endless, striving noise recedes, leaving only the soft, steady rhythm of your own breathing, a quiet anchor in the vast commotion of sleep.